Anticlimactic. Awesome music, chubby middle-aged white guy on stage. Hey, welcome to church. Hey, if you came in and you didn't get a chance to grab notes, raise your hand. We'll bring them to you right now. We're gonna do some Bible teaching this weekend. Typically we are, kind of interactive with story and then application. This weekend it's a lot of Bible information. And so if you don't have notes, we've got people slowly making their way down. We'll eventually get there. Shannon, maybe you could swing all the way back up the middle. I don't know if that's possible. It might not even be legal to do that, but we're just gonna make that decision. Yeah, we are. We're rebelling right now. Really excited to end the service the way that we want to because my heart needs to be reminded of something right now. And I'm going to explain the right now by going back way deep in history. So have you ever wondered why when you read your Old Testament, there are prophets and there are priests, and then you hit the Gospels and there's Pharisees and Sadducees? It's like, what, did I miss a chapter or something? Did we change the names? Is that like the Greek name of the old Hebrew word? What happened there? Well, I'll tell you what happened. Alexander the Great happened. When he started to conquer the world, he handled conquering differently than most kingdoms had before his time. He wanted not only, to dominate and win and, go full bro on it, but he also wanted to share culture. He wanted some sort of a massive connected empire rather than a bunch of fallen empires. And so there were two things that he did in large part to try and connect everything he built. One is he spread his language. And he was northern Greece, technically. He was a Macedonian. But he spread from Greece all the way to India. And as he did, he wanted his language spoken because what that would allow is for all of those nations, all of those peoples, and all of those cultures to become interconnected. He thought in one, it would make ruling a massive empire easier, which it would. But number two, the second thing that was unique about him is he wanted shared culture. He wanted to kind of like pick bits and pieces of different thought and approach and religion and life and kind of spread them out. And it was really a radically new way for the world to be ruled. So you've got this bigger than ever before an empire, and you've got a new approach to leading an empire, and then he dies. Like really suddenly, really kind of shockingly, there was no plan in place to handle that. No one had thought through ruling the world the way he was doing it. And so there was this massive vacuum of leadership. So Alexander's empire got split into 4 parts, right? You guys know this. Of course we know this, Tim. Keep talking. So Israel winds up kind of like in an in-between area between the kingdom that handled northern Africa and Egypt, that area, or off into Syria, that area. They found themselves constantly like in this flux. And in the flux, in the shifting change of like, are we dominated right now or are we independent right now? 2 different groups emerge in Jewish culture. And one group sees opportunity to say, okay, this is the perfect chance. If we don't grab back our language, we can't fully engage our scripture. And if we can't fully engage our scripture, we can't fully engage our faith. And if we can't fully engage our faith, we can't fully engage our way of life. And so we need to preserve this right now. With all of the flux and all of the change, let's conserve what we've got, because otherwise we're going to lose our past. And this group was called the Pharisees. Over here, there was a different group, and they were nervous too. And they said, gosh, the world changed under Alexander. And, I get that he's passed, and I know there's power grab right now, but even the power grabs, now they're happening in a different way than they've ever happened in history before. And if we don't embrace the Greek language, if we don't embrace the fact that now trade is different, we're going to be left behind. And the world is going to move past us, and we'll lose our past because we've ignored the future. And so you had a group called the Sadducees. Guys, I'm not making this up, okay? You've got social liberals and you've got social conservatives, and they were worried. They were fearful that they would lose their heritage if they didn't preserve it, or they were worried that they'd lose their future if they didn't tend to it. And we laugh because, oh, okay, but the Bible doesn't understand, like, you don't understand today's day and age. Like, how could you predict social media? You go on social media, it's like, I'd like to get in a fight today. I'm gonna go on social media. It's this and this, isn't it? I mean, that's what's dominating it. You're either going on Facebook to look at puppy videos or to like get in the middle of this right now, right? That's the way it works. And the reason I set that up is for a long time in my Christian walk, I have worked hard to say, this takes precedent, this is above, this levels my heart, this steers my thoughts, and I've got, this is like weighing on me right now. It is weighing on me hard and heavy, and honestly, truly, and this is not a teaching hook or whatever. Like, there have been some shifts in my personal priorities, and this is not proud. This is kind of settling into a second spot lately. It really is. And so I need today, and I'm sorry if you don't. You can start thinking about the game right now and the spread if you want. But what we're going to end with, I need to land on as an individual. As a believer, I've got to end up where this is going to end up. And so hopefully, after talking it through 3 times this weekend, hopefully I'll get there. So write something down, and then we're going to talk it through. This weekend is about God's promise for freedom. It just is. There are 3 stories we're going to look at to get there. Honestly, I'm going to tell you that I'm cheating. The first 2 stories are only about the third. This weekend is only about the third story, but the third story is the Last Supper, and it's communion. And communion is like, it's just vaguely redundant. It's just a habit in church tradition, and so we go through it. Well, the 2 stories are going to help thicken out the third, and so that when we end our time together with communion, we've even got, this is the most Southern California thing you've ever heard, we even have gluten-free communion wafers today. I know, my wife and son actually have celiac disease, so thank goodness we live in Southern California. We're gonna land let's just take it through. Exodus chapter 12 is where we're gonna start. And there's this really weird story. You're familiar with it, so you don't think it's weird, but it is. And let me explain it to you. Exodus chapter 12, verse 5. God says this about the Passover, about that first night. The animals you choose must be year-old males without defect, and you may take them from sheep or goats. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the members of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. They're to take some of the blood, and they're put it on the sides and the tops of the door frames of the houses where they eat their lambs. That same night, they're to eat the meat roasted over the fire along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. Nothing's going to rise right now. It's got to stay unrisen. Do not eat the meat raw or boiled in water, because boiled goat is nasty. No me gusta boiled chiva, right? But that's another Southern California distinctive this weekend. But roasted over a fire with the head, legs, and internal organs. Don't leave any of it until morning. If some is left until morning, you got to burn it. And this is how you're to eat it: with your cloak tucked into your belt, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. This is the Lord's Passover. Okay, there's a bunch of stuff that just happened that is so important. And I know a lot of the time we talk through, story and application and stuff. For a while, guys, I'm gonna ask you for probably 18 minutes. I just want you to learn Bible stuff, okay? And I promise it'll make sense at the end when we land it. But for a while, it's just Bible stuff, all right? Cool, I didn't even give you a chance. So, this is where we're at. This is now a timeline. This isn't the social conservatives and liberals, which is amazing to me that all of human history is really connected. We're right now on a timeline. And this is the year 1350 BC, 1350-ish, okay? We're also in a very specific location. We are in Egypt. The last 400 years on our timeline, me as a Jewish believer in Yahweh, all I've known is a history of enslavement. That's my total context. But this hero comes into town and challenges the establishment, and he says to the status quo, hey, some things are gonna change, and my people are gonna be free. And man, my heart starts to flutter. It's like a little bit of a rebellion, and like, man, this is gonna be cool. And then he does something really strong and powerful. There's a plague, and it fails. And he's like, oh, cool, well, we're gonna bounce back. He's gonna come back, and he comes back again in a second one, and it fails. And a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth, and a seventh, and an eighth, and a ninth. 9 in a row did not do anything to move me to freedom. So you're in a weird spot emotionally at that point, right? Like you're discouraged, and then maybe there's a glimpse of hope, and then maybe you go right back into discouragement, like, man, it's never going to work. And then God speaks this, and he says, hey, tonight is different. Tonight, I want you to pay attention to some really important details, because right now in Egypt, at this moment in history, you're about to be free. Like, what does that do to you? What does it do to your faith, your emotions, the way you see your life in the world? It's a weird moment. And to explain to you guys what was going on, there are 3 things I want you to know. One, from this paragraph that we just read, you've got to know that this is an all-in moment that's really unparalleled in our culture. There are 2 things that kind of get close to what's going on. Christmas Day is kind of like this. Most of us celebrate Christmas, but not all of us celebrate Christmas the same way, right? Like some of you guys, you load up your camper and you take, like pallets, and you go out and you've got your quads, you bury a turkey and like you bake it that way, and that's your way. Some of you, it's tamales, right? And you've got tamales on Christmas. Some of you, you plan so much for the presents, you don't even have a plan for food, and I've seen you are in the Del Taco drive-thru line at 4:30 and you're getting the Fiesta pack, okay? And as you do, you're like you feel bad that someone's got to work at Del Taco on Christmas, so you don't make eye contact in the drive-thru. You just hand them your $17 and you're like, just give me the burritos. Like, no one speak of this moment. So it's similar, but it's different. Because it's like, we're not all in. And then the other thing, honestly, is this weekend. Super Bowl is like that other day in our culture where we're all vaguely aware of the same thing, right? But even today, some of you right now, you're judging me in your mind. You're like, stop talking about stupid football. I'm so tired of my country and football. Blah, blah. And so it's not even today isn't like this. But you've been a part of things where it felt all in, and it's just different. Like when you were young and used to have your set of friends, and you guys used to do dumb stuff. Not even because you would ever choose to do it, but because you were all doing it, right? And now you watch for your kids and what friends they've got, because when they're with their friends, they'll do dumb stuff. If you've been to a concert or a sporting event, just that sense of like, man, we're all here right now. Like, yeah, I'm gonna yell at that ref with you, my brother, because I'm mad too. Like that sense of all in is a big deal. It's a really big piece of how God explains the Passover, the Exodus. It's an all in moment. 2, it was specific. There were just a few details, but they had to be followed. God says, on this day, with this sort of an animal of this gender, you're gonna cook it this way. As a matter of fact, you all need to do it at the exact same time on the exact same day. And this is going to be something that is not gonna be like, hey, we're gonna get together and hang out. No, the details of what this tradition is, the details communicate something. You are expressing faith in my character through what you do, so fall in. There's some details you gotta pay attention to. And then the third thing, it's all in, it's detailed. And the third thing, I don't know the best way to say it, it's complete. Like it's complete in a way that's different to us. This would have been weird for them. So he says a few things, right? He says, eat all of it, don't leave any until morning. As a matter of fact, if some is left until morning, burn it. Okay, so have dinner with your family, and then there's leftovers, right? And you judge it. If there's like a little bit of leftovers, it's scraped into the disposal or the trash, right? And like house to house, that's a different amount. Like some of you, it better be like a little bit. And some of you, like, I super don't want to have to put this in the fridge, so you scrape it. But then some of us, there's an amount of leftovers left that you're like, man, I feel bad about the kids in Africa, right? And so like, I'm not gonna scrape that into the trash. I'm gonna put it in Tupperware, hide it in the back of my fridge, and then in 6 weeks, then I'll throw it away. Because it's gonna have mold and you're supposed to throw that food away. And that's what we do with leftovers. It would be weird if there was a lot of food left and you told your kids, you're like, burn it. And they'd be like, what? Burn it. What? First of all, I like the direction this is going, Mom, but what? You're like, we do not need anything left over. I don't get it. Why? In this context, it's because we're leaving tonight. God is setting us free right now. No more slavery, no more failure. We leave now. Okay, Mom, you know that like we bought the house we live in, and like if we burn the leftovers, like it's just symbolic at this point. Do it, burn the leftovers. And so they do. And then the second thing, it says this, eat it with your cloak tucked in, sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. Man, that's not the way you eat a meal in Middle Eastern culture. A meal is a shared experience. You relax. You take off your sandals. You like put down your staff. You're not in a hurry. Let me explain it this way. Your friends invite you over for a meal. Not today. Today's a lingering day. Not today. A Tuesday night. And you got stuff to do, and you got to finish your kids' science project for them soon. And so you go over and you're thinking, I'm sorry, you don't do that at your house. Obviously. You go over and you're just really mindful, like, I need to get going. And so you sit down, and when you sit down at the dinner table, you drop your keys on the table right in front of your plate. Oh, shocking. Man, you're like on the Real Housewives of Orange County with that move right there. Like that is socially shocking. You don't do that. You would be, you don't even know somebody that rude, right? But that's what this is. Hey, tuck in your cloak, put on your sandals, and I want you to hold your staff while you eat, because it's ready to go. If you want to feel how socially awkward this is, this week in your small group, when people start to pray, pull out your keys and start to like jingle them, like, let's go, pray it up, just tell God we love him and let's go. Don't do that. You'll get kicked out of small group. It was all in, it was detailed, and it was complete. Like, be ready now. Passover is a big deal. Verse 12, passage continues. On that same night, I'm going to pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. That's what I remember. I remember that the Passover, the Exodus, is about my freedom from slavery. But as I slowed down this week and I looked at Exodus 12, and I looked at Jeremiah 31, and I looked at Luke 22, I've never noticed this before. Verse 13 says, the blood's gonna be a sign for you on the houses where you live. And when I see the blood, I'm gonna pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you. And so 1350 BC, Egypt, Passover is about God's ability to deliver from Egypt, but it's also about his ability to deliver from death. I've never noticed that the Passover is about both. It's about my freedom from captivity, but it's also about my freedom from death. And that theme goes all the way back, for sure to Genesis 3, that when we fell into death, but then God promised a deliverer, which is Jesus. That's Eve and Jesus. But this Passover it's an echo again of what happened in the garden. And it's again, captivity and death. It's both. Just a little detail that I wanted you to know. And then verse 24, it says this, obey these instructions as a lasting ordinance for you and your descendants. And when you enter the land that the Lord will give you as he promised, observe this ceremony. When your children ask you, what does this ceremony mean to you? Why are you eating with the keys on the table? Why are you burning the leftovers? Why do we do this every year? This is so different than the way we handle life. You tell them it's the Passover sacrifice to God. who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt and spared our homes when he struck down the Egyptians. The event was supposed to be repeated, and it was supposed to always be a little bit different because it was supposed to communicate to your kids. Hey guys, here's what we believe about God. We believe he delivers. We believe he frees from death. And so every little bit and piece of this meal, it's an expression of some things we believe. I love the fact that God doesn't ask us to all read theology books and sit down with your kids and talk about, the differences between Protestant and Roman Catholic doctrine and make sure that you're able to articulate the theanthropic union of the hypostatic person. He says, hey, you know what? Every year have a meal and do some things in particular. And then at the end of the meal, when your kids are asking, why do we do this? Say, man, I believe God sets people free. Like that's it. That's the sort of theologian he asks us to be. I really appreciate that about my God. It was an all-in, interactive, meaningful way to reflect on God's ability to set free. But the problem is that this Passover was just thick with meaning, and over time, it changed. It lost its meaning. I don't know if it's because of the repetition of it, or it's because somewhere along the way, people got more excited about the food than the meaning. I mean, I know that would be my mistake, right? But like 1, 2, 50, 200, 500, 700 Passovers later, we're going to wind up in a different book of the Old Testament. We're going to wind up in Jeremiah, and it's just different. So that's the second story. Write this down. This story is about God's promise of freedom. Guys, there was Super Bowl this week. I couldn't think of other words to say, okay? So we just copied and pasted. No, I'm sorry. You'll see what we mean in a minute. 700 Passovers later, Jeremiah chapter 31. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I'm going to make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It's not going to be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, even though I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. Okay, you're somewhere else. Like, I cannot explain to you how different of a world you're in when you read these words. This is the prophet Jeremiah. He wrote big chunks of the Old Testament, and he references his day and age, and he compares it to what we just read, doesn't he? He says, the days are coming when I'll make a new covenant with the people of Israel. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand out of Egypt. Okay, so time-wise, you're around the year 600-ish, right around there. Location-wise, you're in Iraq. You're not in Egypt. And I say Iraq because the Bible says Babylon, and that was the empire at the time. But modern day Iraq is ancient Babylon. Saddam Hussein, he had a summer palace, and he would look out over the ruins of ancient Babylon in Baghdad. So it's funny to me, not funny, haha, like it's ironic that when you read Jeremiah, your heart is supposed to wince a little bit when you read that God's people are being pulled off to Iraq. Because in our modern day and age, Iraq is a tough one too. It's just like that's a sensitive topic. And so it actually works to our favor to really understand that Jeremiah is 700 years after the Exodus, and God's telling him, hey, by the way, you're getting pulled off to Iraq. You have not remembered at all the covenant that I made with you. As a matter of fact, this paragraph that we just read says it's broken, right? Like they broke my covenant. And so God says something really foundationally important in this passage that I just read to you. He says, in Iraq, in captivity, I'm going to make a new covenant with you guys. Well, that language is important. You guys, you have your Old Testament and your New Testament, right? Yeah, you have your Old Covenant and your New Covenant. Jeremiah 31 is an indictment back on what happened in Egypt. That's a hard moment. Because if you were a Jewish believer, you were really proud of this moment. This is like, well, at least we had the Exodus. And the Passover to us is our national pride. It's our independence. We're really proud of it. But man, 50, 250, 500, 700 years later, the Passover has no more meaning. And God says, okay, Jeremiah, I'm going to make a new covenant with people. And it's going to be a contrast, and it's going to be hard. Like I didn't know how proud of an American I was until I went to a meeting with my son in 8th grade. They were going to do an 8th grade field trip, their 8th grade trip off to New York and DC. And they said that it was $3,200 for a student to go on the trip. And I learned how much I don't love America. Apparently, I don't love it $3,200 worth. I got like nervous. I'm like, oh, son, I super want you to go learn those things. I don't know if I wanted $3,200 worth. Like, this caught me a little off guard. Like I buy $100 Christmas trees, son. I don't know if I can. I'm kidding, I don't. I don't know if I can do this. And he looked at me, he's like, oh, Dad, I really want to go on this trip. And I just said something that was in my head. It wasn't a promise. I wasn't making a covenant, but I said, man, Micaiah, I could take you and me and Judah to DC for less than $3,200. And he said, okay, cool, that'd be good. And I'm like, oh. And so for 9 months, we saved up and we did. We were able to go to DC and we went, to that. I don't know if you've been to the mall between the Jefferson Memorial and the Capitol building and, the Washington Monument and the reflecting pool and all the Smithsonian and all that. But we were in one of the, I loved being there, but we were in the rotunda. It's this room where the Declaration of Independence is, like the one. And I walked in that room and man, like right now remembering it, like, I got the goosebumps on my triceps, right? And I'm glad something's happening with your triceps. That was rude. I'm in that room and I'm looking at it. When God says to Jeremiah, I'm going to make a new covenant with you because the old one is broken. Like there was a sense of national pride over the old one, guys. And God says, we got to make a new one. Because that old covenant is broken. And then God begins to describe it in verse 33. He said, this is the covenant I'll make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I'm going to put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. Oh, Bible nerds. You're really like, oh my goodness. Jeremiah 31 is a contrast to the Exodus, right? Did you hear what he just said? I'll write my law on their hearts instead of tablets of stone. There's some contrast happening. God's saying, I'm not going to have an external faith that you watch from a distance and you participate through and habit. I'm going to write my law on your heart. You're not going to have to teach your neighbor or say to one another, know the Lord, because they're all going to know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord, because I will forgive their wickedness and remember their sins no more. This covenant is unique. That one, hey, do these rituals. It's going to be about Egypt. And so your immediate context is going to communicate a spiritual truth. I'm going to free you from something really strong so that you know I'm really strong. This one is different. He just says, you know what? I'm only working in your heart. It's me straight to you. That one is a lot about you respond, you obey, you follow. This one is I will. This covenant is better than that one. This covenant is God saying, I adore you as a human individual. And now when you respond to me in faith, I move into your heart, I forgive your wickedness, and I'm strong in your life. But it's hard because this is all me just believing. We need the tangibles God, but I want you to deliver us from Iraq. That would be a great way to demonstrate your strength. That covenant is broken. This new one is me straight into your heart. Oh, but God, I'd sure love a sign. I'd sure love something tangible. I have a friend who's in Houston right now. No, let me explain. I have a friend who's in Houston right now. My friend 2 weeks ago got a phone call and they said, hey, congratulations, Mr. So-and-so. We'd like to inform you that you've won our grand prize. You've won an all expenses paid trip to the Super Bowl. And he was like, okay. And all I need to do is give you my bank routing number and you'll move all the funds in. And they're like, no, sir, I totally understand how you could think that, but no, you've won this trip. And he's like, okay, all right, sure. And they're like, no, sir, but you've won. Okay, all right, okay. But no, I didn't. Okay, no, but sir, I'm trying to give you Super Bowl tickets, like you won. And he's like, no, I don't believe you. And I get it, right? People from Victorville don't go to Super Bowls. That's not what we do. And so he was with them on the phone for half an hour, and he hung up the phone, and he's like, I might have won a trip to the Super Bowl. But he still didn't believe. And then they emailed him like a week later, and it was his airfare. And they sent him the stuff and his name, his wife's name, and he's like, all right, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna take the code, and I'm gonna put it into this airline's website, and I'm not gonna tell them anything else. And so he took the code and he put it in and he clicked the button, boop, seats, flights, his name, his wife's name, and he's like, oh, man, if someone's playing a joke on me, they took it too far. And so then he got another email like 3 days ago with his hotel reservations and how to pick up his tickets at Will Call for the Super Bowl. And I'm like fighting in my heart to be excited for him, right? But it's like, I'm just angry. And like he struggled the whole way, till getting on the plane. And I told him before he left, I'm gonna need a picture. Because I still don't actually believe that this is happening. In between the first and the second service, he sent me a picture. He's hanging at the stadium right now. I took a picture with Mean Joe Green. And I'm looking at this picture, I'm like, good for you. Man, that's great. God showed something right there. I was like, cool, I'll get excited about this Passover. I'm gonna repeat it, I'm gonna tell my kids. God says right here, there's gonna be a new covenant, and I'm gonna go straight to your heart. God, I'd sure love to see something, because right now it's hard to believe, because I'm in Iraq, and I don't know. Write down this last story. I'm guessing you already saw the screen. Luke chapter 22. Then came the day of unleavened bread on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John saying, go make preparations for us to eat the Passover. Oh shoot, guys, this is fun now. We get to our point, and doesn't it already make more sense? Jesus is about to be betrayed and crucified on Passover weekend. So the disciples are at the Passover meal, and you know stuff about this, don't you? You know there was a lamb or a goat, and then it needed to be roasted, and then it needed to be consumed completely. You know that they had to eat the meal with some haste. You know that it was the 14th of the month. You know that everyone, God on that weekend had every Jewish person honoring Christ even though they weren't honoring Christ. Everyone was ready for him that weekend. And what were their minds on? Was it on Egypt or was it on Iraq? Because now when they're eating this Passover, they're under Roman rule. And are you the sort of person that when you do this, you're like, no, God, I believe what you did, and I just believe you're a deliverer. Despite my circumstance, I'm looking up rather than out. Or are you the sort of person that you're like, yeah, and you told Jeremiah that you're gonna make a new covenant with us, but we're in Iraq. And right now we're under Rome. And so whatever, this is a thing we do, we eat Passover, because I'm a Jew. It's what I do. Where are you if you're in the year 33 AD and you're doing this ceremony? My guess is that it was different from person to person, right? So verse 17, after taking the cup, he gave thanks, and Jesus said, hey, take this and divide it among you. For I tell you, I'm not going to drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. And now verse 19, and he took the bread and he gave thanks and he broke it and he gave it to them saying, this is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. That's your old school communion verse, isn't it? Jesus says, okay guys, hey, Passover meal is done. We're done with the Passover. I'm going to tweak it. I'm going to break bread and I'm going to give it to you, and I want you to eat this piece of bread. Okay, we just finished dinner though. I know. When you eat this bread, this is me, and I'm about to be broken for you. Okay, all right. I mean, this is a new twist on an old tradition. We'll do that. You got it. And so they're taking the bread, and Jesus is saying, this is me. And then, this is my favorite moment. Verse 20, in the same way, after the supper, he took the cup. It was another cup. And he said, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. Oh, that's cool. So we just sat through this whole meal, and it's the Passover lamb, and it symbolizes I'm free from captivity and from death. And Jesus breaks bread at the end and he says, hey, eat this last piece of bread and remember me because I'm broken for you. And then he hands them all a cup and he says, this cup is the new covenant. Not me, I'm the guy who's jealous of a friend. Jesus, I'm that and I'm this. I am strong enough to deliver you from captivity, and I'm close enough to step to your heart. Tonight is the new covenant, guys. This is it. Oh, that's a big deal. Jesus is the Passover. Jesus is the new covenant. He's freedom from Egypt and death. He's freedom from captivity and loneliness. What a crazy moment to be in if you were one of those guys. Jesus was saying that he has fixed the broken hope that the Exodus once upon a time gave. He's saying that he is the scraping hope that Jeremiah whispered to people in captivity of Iraq. Egypt or Iraq or Rome was not the issue at hand. Conservative or liberal was not the issue at hand. This is communion. That God has his affection resting on you. And that by faith you believe that you know him. And that when he steps into your life, he covers your sin. He forgives it. And he teaches you, and he draws you, and he loves you. And that as an individual, you have communion with God. Communion, that name, is not like, it doesn't mean bread and juice. It means togetherness. And so we're going to take communion today because my heart needs it. Because my heart needs to remember that something can float to the surface and it can speak peace to who I am. And then my heart can rest in a seat of freedom, and out of that sense of freedom, I can engage the world around me. And I can be more proud of my faith than my political views. I can be more settled in my perpetual freedom than in my momentary circumstance. And then I can reflect through this habit that I have a deep faith that my God saves. Amen? We're going to pray. Oh, wait, you've got to write down your last thing. I'm the worst at this. Something defines your idea of freedom. Be the boss of that definition. Now I'm going to pray. Father, I am sorry and I'm embarrassed to have to confess in front of a bunch of people that I have put you second recently. God, most of the time I fight to keep you first. And God, I let a lot of opinions and circumstances get the best of me lately. And God, that does not bring out the best in me. And Father, I pray that you would remind us of what's best. God, we thank you for the fact that we can now take communion. And so, Father, during this song, as we pass out the elements, God, help us to just hold on to it for just a minute. God, help us to wait for the whole room to have what we need. And I pray that you would help us in this moment to be reflective of the fact that this is a lot about you. And God, I pray that you would help through this obedience, this act, this interactive, this all in. I pray that this moment would help pull our hearts back to freedom. God, help us to be desperately proud and loyal to you first. Amen.